is Friday night, Hangout, creating our stories, beats like this. This is Friday night, Hangout, creating our stories, beats like this. Exploring limitless opportunities, illuminate our path, amplify our impact. Oh, it's Friday night Hangout. It's Friday night Hangout. It's safe space for ideation.
Are you feeling stuck in your business, professional, or personal life? Or are you struggling to find purpose and direction? Imagine having a clear sense of direction, achieving your goals, and living a fulfilling life. Joy Onyesoh Coaching Consult is here to help you. We will work with you to identify your strengths, overcome obstacles, and develop a personalized plan to achieve your dreams. With our coaching and consulting services, you will gain clarity, confidence, and the tools you need to succeed. Do not let fear, lack of clarity, or doubt hold you back any longer. Take the first step towards achieving your goals and living your best life. Contact Joy Onyesoh Coaching Consult today. Joy Onyesoh Coaching Consult, empowering you to reach your full potential. Call, SMS, or WhatsApp +234 704 229. Ever feel like you're running on autopilot, but deep down you know there's more to your story? That's where Clarity Lounge comes in. We're creating a space for women to pause, reflect, and gain clarity on their goals and purpose. I am Joy Onyesoh, your clarity and focus coach, and I look forward to welcoming you to the Clarity Lounge Masterclass. In this masterclass, you'll get expert coaching to help you overcome self-doubt and achieve a boost in your confidence. You also get our proprietary clarity framework to guide your decision making, goal setting, and result-focused actions. Connections with like-minded women who support and uplift you. You will also learn risk and trade-off analysis and intentional goal setting architecture and much more. Join us on March 21st, 2026 for in-person 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. limited slots. Imagine having a clear vision for your next 6 months, a support system that drives your success, the tools to overcome obstacles and stay focused, and a personalized plan using our clarity framework. You want to take the first step towards clarity? Get registered, and I'll see you at the Clarity Lounge. Hello, good evening, and welcome to another exciting episode of Friday Night Hangout. I'm your host, Joy Onyesoh. Last week we had conversation on clarity in communication, how to say what you mean. Tonight we have a hot topic, and that is clarity in decision making, cutting through the noise. Welcome once again to season 22, episode 242 of the Friday Night Hangout. We have a very special guest in the house tonight. She's a dear sister, she's a friend, she's a colleague, and I'm super excited to introduce to you and to welcome to the Friday Night Hangout studio, Professor Ona C. Miller. Welcome, my darling sister.
Yes, I am so glad to be here, Professor Joy, with you again on an amazing Friday night hangout.
Thank you. And you know, you are our first guest for this year. So, woo!
Yes.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited about that.
Thank you so much. I'm even more excited, especially because of the conversation we'll be having. But before I ask you to introduce yourself, I just want to welcome everyone to the Friday Night Hangout studio. If you're just coming in, please sit tight, get your writing material, your note-taking device. It's going to be sizzling hot tonight. Whenever you see my sister, Professor Anna, in the studio wearing red, oh God, get ready. So we're going to be talking about clarity in decision making, cutting through the noise. And if this is your first time joining us, this is Friday Night Hangout. Here we have topical conversations that would enable you grow your personal brand, your business, and your professional brand. So like us, subscribe to Power Woman TV or even Friday Night Hangout, and you wouldn't miss any of our exciting episodes. So over to you, my dear sister. Can you let us meet you so we know who you are? For those who haven't met you, who are you? What do you do?
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Friday Night Hangout. I am Professor Dr. Ona C. Miller, and I am the CEO and founder of the Global Female Civility Leadership Institute. And more than anything, my life, my passion, my drive, my purpose is supporting women in leadership, women organizations, to just be the best that they can be. I am a supporter by nature, by heart, and then I'm also a leader, just to give direction and clarity and provide whatever information I can to help others. So I'm very excited about the topic, clarity in decision making, because as we know, decision making is one of the most important things that we do in our lives. It affects everything that we do. So I am just glad to be here, and I look forward to having this discussion and this conversation.
Thank you so much and welcome once more. And I'm really excited here because I know you and I know how you unpack. So if you're here tonight, you're watching this, you're watching the replay, I'll say pay rapt attention. We're going to run through so many stuff tonight that will give you direction. Perhaps you're looking for pointers in your next season. Perhaps you're at a place where you feel overwhelmed. You feel that the season is chaotic. This is that space where you're going to have clarity and direction. So we will jump right in with the first question that would, set the ball rolling. And that is, what really is clarity in decision making? When we talk about clarity in decision making, what are we talking about?
Well, when we talk about clarity in decision making, I would have to say that it is the ability to see a choice for what it really is and what it truly is. And oftentimes when we make decisions, we always do that with this emotional attachment. But clarity in decision making is doing that without the emotional distortion or any type of external pressure or any type of fear or clouding, anything that will cloud the big picture. And a lot of times we don't make those decisions because we want to know, what the end point or the solution or, what's going to happen at the end. And so a lot of times we don't make decisions because we want to know what's going to happen before I make the decision. And that's not always the case. A lot of times we don't see the end, I would also have to say that the clarity in decision making, it has partially something to do with sight, but it's mainly about alignment because we can see all of the pieces. We can see, how A, B, C, and D might work, but until they are absolutely aligned, then, the decision making doesn't really count. It doesn't benefit us. And that's what we want it to do. We want it to benefit us. And so, we don't always know the outcome. We don't always see how things are going to end. And sometimes we may think we know how it's going to end, and it just might not end that way. So it's having that alignment, alignment about the reason for the decision. A lot of times we have to look at the reason why we need to make that decision, the reason why that we are even at the point that we have to decide. And so when clarity is presented, you have to understand your values, your responsibility in making that decision, the long-term direction. You need to know all of that well enough, and instead of being reactively to the decision, you want to do it deliberately. And so I would say it would be all about alignment. It's beyond being able to see, but also being aligned, is where the clarity comes in for decision making.
Thank you so much for really unpacking that. Two things just, popped out of me when you were talking. The first is seeing a decision for what it really is without the clouding of all the emotions, the sentiments, right? And then the other one, is when everything is in alignment, making sure things are in alignment. And I think these are the two key areas we struggle with when it comes to decision making. And when we are able to see a decision for what it is, then we're able to take that step we need to take, right? So how can we cut through the noise, right, in decision making to see a decision for what it really is? Because oftentimes we're struggling because there's a whole lot of noise, there's a whole lot of distraction, we're overthinking, we're overanalyzing the external forces and dynamics, and we can't cut through the noise to see a decision for what it really is, or to make sure that we're in alignment. So how do we cut through all this noise?
Well, I would say, Professor Joy, cutting through the noise means learning to distinguish between just information that's out there versus what is relevant to the decision-making process. Because what I have learned in life is a lot of times we make decisions and we have all this stuff that we think that is supposed to help us make the decision. And most of the stuff is not even relevant to our decision making or the decision that we need to make. And so I would say the first thing, cutting out the noise, as you know, a lot of times the loudest thing in our ears are people. Those people around us. Who are you listening to? Who's giving you the right advice? And sometimes we don't even really need to take that advice. Sometimes we need to just look inwardly and start making some decisions. And that's when that self-leadership comes in. But cutting out that noise means that we don't listen to the opinions of others who may think that they know what's best for us, or who may think they know our lives and our struggles and what we've been through in our journey. So I would say, cutting out the noise starts with some of the people around us. And then those societal expectations, those traditional expectations, the expectations that are placed up on us through tradition, society, and culture. I mean, if you look around the world now and look at all of the expectations that they just have on us as human beings, but then us as women and women in leadership, just those expectations, cutting out that noise. And then sometimes I would say urgency. How they pressure you to make a quick decision, or they pressure you to make a decision one way or the other, or they pressure you to make a decision that might not favor you, but could favor someone else. And then also, I would say fear of judgment. We're so afraid of what someone's going to think about us. We're so afraid of what they're going to say. We're so afraid to be different. We're just so afraid of all of those things. And then another thing to cut out the noise is, as we said before, those emotions, those unprocessed emotions that might be back there hiding behind us, whether that's sometimes that could be grief, that could be anger, that could be mistrust, that could be so many things that we have. So those are the areas where you cut out the noise. And that's with people, that's with pressure and urgency, that's with fear and judgment. And then those unprocessed emotions and those expectations.
Wow, thank you so much for this. When you talked about information, distinguishing between what is relevant, right, and what I need to know versus just having all the information, that really spoke to me, right? It resonated deeply with me, especially in this age where we have a lot of tips that are fake. You know, we have access to a whole lot because now the world is a global village. And one of the things I found out from my personal experience and talking with clients is the more information we get, sometimes it leads to paralysis, right? You're getting so much information and you're just confused. You're afraid, you know, because you don't even know which one to take. So being able to distill what I need to know, what action I need to take, that would take me to the next question, which is, do we have any practical framework so that we're not making emotional decisions? I love structure. I love system, because you can always reuse, you can always adapt, you can always upscale. So what are some of the practical frameworks that can help us in making sound decisions?
Well, there is one framework that I always go back to, or should I say use or return to. And I like to call it the alignment, the impact, and the sustainable lens, you know, from where I see. And so first, I'll start with alignment. And when I say alignment, I always want to know, does this decision align with my values, my purpose, and my responsibility? And if something, you know, sometimes looks good, but externally, you know, it may pull us out of alignment, or it may pull us off of our assignment, or it may pull us away from our purpose, then that's a signal that I normally pay attention to. That's the first thing. So I would say alignment on that. And then secondly, I would think impact, because you want to know how it's going to impact, who it's going to impact. And you want to know if that's going to be negative or positive. And of course, we want to make a positive impact. So number two would be impact, to think about who and what this decision is going to affect, you know, not just immediately, but we want to talk about like long term, you know, over time, not 6 months, not but we want to talk about long term, you know, even when we want to think about legacy, you know. So I would think impact, you know, thinking, and as strong women and strong leaders, you know, thinking beyond the short term wins. You know, we always want those quick wins and those quick things, but what about beyond that? And think about the domino effect or the ripple effect, or who this is going to touch. And then I think number three, of course, is the sustainability part. You know, can I maintain this decision emotionally? You know, can I maintain it ethically? And can I maintain it practically? You know, is this decision going to drain me? Is it going to drain those around me? Is it going to compromise me? You know, my integrity. So those are the three things that I always look at. I always go back to as my framework is alignment, impact, and sustainability.
Wow, this is huge. And so if you're just tuning in, we're talking about clarity in decision making, cutting through the noise. And Professor Ona Similia has given us a framework, AIS. A for alignment. You want to be sure that whatever decision you're taking is not going to pull you out of your assignment, your purpose, you know, so that you don't feel, you know how sometimes you're struggling internally with a decision or an action or some commitment you've made, then you need to sit back and think about it again. Am I doing this? And I told us last week, not every good decision needs to be taken, because you need to look at it via this framework now. You now have to see, is it in alignment? Then what is the impact? Who is going to be impacted? What impact is it going to create? So that you are very carefully and intentionally making this decision. Then you want to look at the S, sustainability. How can I sustain this? Is it practical for me over the time? Not one-off. Do I have the resources? When I'm talking about resources, I'm talking about time, you know, finance, health-wise, everything. Do you have all the resources to sustain this decision? So write it down somewhere. AIS. That's the framework you want to use in making sound decisions. Okay. I love this. Do you have anything else you want to add if I ask you the next question?
No, that's it. That is literally my framework that I go to. And I will say probably the main one that I look at is the sustainability. Because you have to
Mm,
do that self-care and you have to know
mm,
that you can sustain this yourself because the decision is coming from you. So you've got to know that this is
mm.
something that you can sustain.
Beautiful. Now, if we use this framework, and I do know that sometimes it doesn't flow in this linear way, right? There'll be sometimes
Mhm.
it's in a process, right? A cycle and all of that. So, how then do we deal with cost benefit and clarity tools? So, do you have any feedback to us on what are some of the cost benefit tools we can use, or how do we even do a cost benefit analysis? Some would say a risk and trade off analysis. So, cost benefit, how do we make those decisions looking at the big picture and having a bird's eye view on what that decision is all about?
Well, Professor Joy, you just actually touched on some of those things when you talked about resources, because we often think that cost is just about money, but its cost is so
Mm,
much more than that. It's energy, it's peace, it's time, it's consequences. We don't ever think about the consequences. And so when you talk
mm,
about cost, it's much more than money. And I would even venture out to invite everybody, when you're making a decision and you're counting up the cost, look at those things that are visible, but also what's invisible when it comes to cost.
mm,
What would this decision require of you emotionally? What will it cost you in terms of your rest, your focus, your goals, your relationships, your dreams, your aspirations? Um, and then, you want to look on the benefit side of it too, because you said this earlier, Professor Joy, is not all good options or good opportunities we need to accept. Not everything that will benefit us, we need to accept. Just because it will benefit us does not necessarily mean that it's going to advance us in our purpose. It's not going to advance our life. It's not going to advance our journey. So every should I say something that's beneficial, or the options, or the benefits, that doesn't mean that that's the right one for us. So the clearest choice is often the
mm.
one that is going to preserve your integrity and also advance you along in your purpose and your reason for existence.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you for that. And I'm hoping we're learning a lot. My head is just in pump, 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 because you're revalidating a number of things that I know. And you're also making me think out of the box as well. And this is a very important conversation, by the way, because we make decisions every day. You make decisions what to wear, what to eat, where to go to, the kind of relationship to keep, what relationship to drop. You're constantly making a decision. And we don't want to make emotional decisions. You want to make decisions that are far reaching, that are intentional, and can move you towards what I would call the promised land. So don't forget the framework AIS. Now, when we make decisions,
Mhm.
sometimes we have come to a place of decision, but we're afraid to take the next. How can we get to a place where we can boldly stand with our decision, take the next move, and just keep moving forward, trusting in that time and space, and that we've made the right decision?
Well, Professor Joy, that's a good question, because I think first and foremost we have to trust in ourselves.
Mm,
And then I would also venture out to say our belief system. When we're making decisions, we have to first um, make those decisions with self trust, and then self trust, and then trusting in what we believe in our belief system. And so when I take the time to like really reflect on that, you have to use wisdom, rather than trying to find validation, because we love to do that. We love to feel validated in our decision. And in my opinion and in my experience, I don't always find validation in my decision making. Matter of fact, sometimes when I make the decision, the people around me may not even agree, but I have to make that decision off of trusting me and what I believe, that inner belief system. What do you believe? And then, of course, as you start doing that, then you've got to also line it up with your values. If you don't have that validation, you think to yourself, okay, what do I believe? What are my values? Um, who and what am I accountable to? Because we can't leave out accountability. Who and what am I responsible for? The people around me, and especially as women, as leaders, there are people who are attached to our assignments, our voices, our lives. And so you have to think about all of those things rather than think about validation. And then you have to move forward boldly. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to doubt, because we will, because I do it all the time. But that also does not mean that you stop. That also does not mean that you procrastinate on making that decision. You make it boldly sometimes, even doubting the decision. But you have to have that trust within yourself, because as we said before, we're not going to always know what the end result is going to be. We can speculate, we can try to come up with an analysis to try to figure out what that's going to be. But we don't always know. We plan, and God, he laughs at our plans sometimes, and then it'll be totally something different. So I would say you have to just move forward boldly, knowing, trusting, faith, in all of those things, and then your belief system. And then, as I said before, the most powerful strategy in all of it is accountability. you know, um, you know, knowing that you are becoming. So when that doubt creeps in, maybe you're not perfect. Maybe the decision, you don't know everything, but you're making that decision from a standpoint of being accountable, from a standpoint of being, responsible, from a standpoint of being, integral. And when you do those things, then how can you lose? It's a decision that's made with boldness, and it's anchored, it's steady, and it's not always loud. It just comes from within.
This is powerful. Thank you for sharing this. We need to know our standard belief system, our values, and it still comes back to what you said earlier on, aligning all of this with who we are, the decisions we need to make, and just trusting yourself, right? Knowing that you are accountable and the decision you need to take is integral to moving forward. I love that bit. That's like a caveat for me. So you don't just take decisions. Oh, you don't owe anyone anything. No, that's not what we're saying here. You need to make sure you're accountable, because you need to ask yourself, who am I responsible for? And knowing that some other people's assignments are tied to yours and to the decision you're going to make. But at the same time, it shouldn't make you to slow down. I would also add that you should give yourself the permission to fail forward, because every good story is, leverages on stories of failing forward. So failures that we would say, if you can retranslate it and refigure it to mean that it is a building block for your success, then you give your permission to keep moving forward. Because oftentimes we're afraid to fail, we're afraid what people will say, we're afraid. I will tell you, one of the greatest things you don't want to live with is the feeling of regret.
Right.
When you look back and you will say, I wish I had done this.
Yeah.
I wish I had done that, So you want to be sure that you are sitting in on things, looking through it and taking the decision you need to take. Thank you so much, Professor Onyesoh, for sharing these valuable insights with us. You've shared with us practical strategies. You've shared with us tools. I love the AIS. So if you missed this, go back and watch and take notes. AIS, your framework. Don't forget it. Frameworks are very important. They help you grow, they keep you accountable, and they help you remember and structure. So thank you, Professor Onyesoh. Before we let you go, some of us may want to reach out to you after now. Where can we reach out to you on? And then you give us your final words.
Well, you can always find me on social media. I am on all of the social media platforms under Dr. Ona C. Miller. So please, tag me, share, friend me, follow me. I'm there. I would love to meet you. And I would love to connect with you and get to know you. And then for my final words, I would just like to just encourage everybody and let everyone know that clarity is not perfection. So you don't have to be perfect. You just really have to have integrity. You just really have to be honest. You just really have to be accountable and responsible. And I always say, just presence, principle, and permission. And just choose wisely and just stand by your choice. And then I would also say, ask your future self, the person that you are getting ready to become or you're becoming, would that person agree with your decision? I often ask myself that, the future you, would you agree with this decision? And if my answer is yes, then I go with it. So I would say presence, principle, and permission. And you do not have to be perfect.
Wow, that's powerful. Clarity is not perfection. Take this with you as you leave here tonight, that clarity is not perfection. And I'm also excited to announce to us that we haven't opened up registration yet for the She Speaks Summit 2026. But Professor Ona Simila is going to be live with us here in Nigeria at the She Speaks Summit 2026. Yay! She's going to be coming all the way from the US. So if you haven't planned to register, please start making plans. So once registration is open, register and you get to meet her in person. Now, I want to see us next week where we wrap up the conversation on clarity. We're going to be talking about clarity in mindset, finding calm in chaos. How can you remain calm? How can you remain focused in chaos? Right? So I thank everyone for joining us. I hope you've had a good time. This is one of those conversations you want to replay and watch and take notes. I'm even going to rewatch this again. So you just want to rewatch it again and then get some more juicy that you can use to run for the year. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next week, Friday. Come with your friend, come with someone else, and trust me, it's going to be fun. Thank you so much, Professor Siona. God bless you for joining us tonight. Bye, everyone. See you next week. Ever feel like you're running on autopilot, but deep down, you know there's more to your story? That's where Clarity Lounge comes in. We're creating a space for women to pause, reflect, and gain clarity on their goals and purpose. I am Joy Onyesoh, your clarity and focus coach, and I look forward to welcoming you to the Clarity Lounge Masterclass. In this masterclass, you'll get expert coaching to help you overcome self-doubt and achieve a boost in your confidence. You also get our proprietary clarity framework to guide your decision making, goal setting, and result-focused actions. Connections with like-minded women who support and uplift you. You will also learn risk and trade-off analysis and intentional goal-setting architecture and much more. Join us on March 21st, 2026 for in-person 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. limited slots. Imagine having a clear vision for your next 6 months, a support system that drives your success, the tools to overcome obstacles and stay focused, and a personalized plan using our clarity framework. You want to take the first step towards clarity? Get registered, and I'll see you at the Clarity Lounge.